Me now from Davos, Switzerland, is our friend, Pennsylvania Congresswoman Madeleine Dean. She's a member of the Appropriations and Foreign Affairs Committees. Welcome. I see you've had safe travels into Denmark. You were there over this weekend. Now they're in Switzerland ahead of the World Economic Forum. But President Trump has not ruled out the use of force against Greenland. Denmark's foreign minister also said a U.S. attack would be the end of NATO. What is the worst-case scenario here? And has the president's threatening rhetoric already damaged U.S. credibility inside NATO in a way that may be irreversible, at least until he leaves office?
Alex, good to be with you. And the very reason we have traveled to Denmark and now to Switzerland is the consequential nature of this threat. I don't want to go to worst case scenario. Our purpose here, and know that it was a 10-member members of Congress, Senate and House, Republicans and Democrats. Importantly, Republicans were with us to speak up, to say, we are your ally in Copenhagen. We met with the foreign minister. We met with the prime ministers of both Greenland and of Denmark. And we met with business leaders. We met with members of parliament, Greenland and Denmark. And I have to tell you, the overwhelming sentiment in Denmark and in Greenland is, what is going on? What has happened? We are one of your greatest allies and friends. We fought alongside you. We fought alongside you following 9/11, the triggering of Article 5. They came, they fought in some of the hardest places. And in fact, we laid a wreath at the memorial for 50 Danish folks, soldiers who lost their lives fighting alongside us.
So when they ask you, what is happening? How do you answer that question? How do you give any reassurances? Could you give reassurances to them like it's going to be okay?
Just us being there was very reassuring because, of course, they're watching all the social media and, of course, the posts of the president. They do not understand the threats. They don't understand the wish to possess a territory that is sovereign, that is not his own. And so what we have said is, in a bipartisan way, with the voices of two senators, Senator Tillis and Senator Murkowski, we said we will go back to the United States and work with our colleagues in Congress, because after all, any kind of threat like this, either a purchase or military action against a NATO ally, you better come to Congress first. And a purchase is so strange and so Trump-like, because do you know what they have said? They said, you at one time had as many as 20 bases on Greenland. You shrank that down to now 1. We invite you. We welcome you. We want to partner with you for greater strategic stability in the Arctic. The other thing I do want to reassure people that we wanted to find out, is there a current threat from China or Russia to Greenland right now? The answer is no. And so what we want to say to the president and to the Republicans in the House and in the Senate, that it is time to absolutely roll this back, persuade the president that this is neither a time to grab land that is not his. They are not an asset. They are an ally. And remember the power of NATO. We should never risk an 80-year bond that has kept the world largely at peace. The other thing go ahead.
But let me ask quickly, is there room at all for compromise here? Because by this description and just observing everything that's going on, it would seem that what Donald Trump wants is to go to his former self as a real estate developer, acquire this land, make it part of the United States, slap his name on it to some degree for posterity. So is there compromisability on any of that with the people with whom you spoke?
That is exactly the kind of thing that I suggested, that there can be a solution to this. Not to invade a sovereign territory, not to take it, not to buy it. It's an absurdity what it would cost to buy. But they are a unique sovereign people. I will tell you, they are hurt. They talk about the fact that their children in Greenland go to bed at night scared, fearful of the Americans. We must roll that back. Is there an answer to this? Absolutely. Let's get more involved. Let's support our NATO ally in the ways that would be meaningful to them and the strategic importance of that area. That is the path forward. They are very open to it, and I hope we will do that. In the meantime, we've got to get back to Congress and remind the president, whether it is tariffs or any kind of military action, it's important that Congress is invited in and is a part of that important conversation. Mm-hmm. I want to leave you with a quote from the president. He was talking about Iran, President Trump. He said to Iran's leader, in order to keep the country functioning, the leadership should focus on running his country, like I do in the U.S. Leadership is about respect, not fear and death. I asked the president to apply that exact same sentence to himself. Run this country well. Let's stop the fighting on the streets, the militarizing of our cities. Let's get the cost of goods down. Let's partner with our allies for a stronger economy. Those are the paths forward.
I am not going to quite let you go because I do want to ask you about the bipartisan group of lawmakers who introduced that resolution condemning Trump's threats towards Greenland, warning that any military action would require Congress's approval. You have Congressman Don Bacon, who said the House could impeach Trump if the U.S. invades. Are enough Republicans willing to sign on and assert their constitutional war powers to block Trump, or do you expect them to fall in line like they did with Venezuela?
I don't know. I do think this one is very different. I think Venezuela was a tipping point, but I think this one is even greater. I saw you showed my friend and colleague McCall, Representative McCall, there on the morning programs. He and I have been talking about these very sets of issues. I don't have a whip count for you on Republicans, but I do know, and Senator Tillis has said, and Murkowski as well, that many Republicans will stand up and say, no, you can't do that.
Okay. Well, considering it's approaching 9:30 p.m. there in Switzerland, now I will let you go. But I thank you very much,
nice to see you.
Representative Madeleine Dean.